Steve Harvey stood backstage looking at his notes one more time, though he'd already memorized every detail. In all his years hosting Family Feud, he'd seen plenty of surprises, but what was about to happen would be unlike anything before. The producers had been working for months to arrange this moment, and now, hidden in a private green room with a production assistant, 75-year-old Louisa Johnson waited nervously, watching the monitor as her twin sister, a sister she'd never known existed, prepared to play Family Feud with her family. On stage, the Williams family from Memphis, Tennessee, stood at their podium wearing matching purple shirts. Loretta Williams, 75 years old with silver hair swept into an elegant bun, adjusted her microphone and smiled at her family. Her husband James stood beside her, still handsome at 77, his hand resting gently on her back. Their 3 children, Marcus, Angela, and Denise, filled out the team, each carrying that mix of excitement and nerves that came with being on television. "Welcome, welcome, welcome to Family Feud," Steve announced, striding onto the stage with his signature energy. The audience erupted in applause, completely unaware they were about to witness television history. "We've got a great show for you today. Let's meet our first family. From Memphis, Tennessee, the Williams family." The audience cheered as Steve approached their podium. "Now, Loretta, I understand. You're something of a legend in Memphis. Tell me about that." Loretta's face lit up with a smile that had been welcoming customers for decades. "Well, Steve, I don't know about legend, but I've been blessed to run Loretta's Kitchen for 48 years now. Started with just 6 tables and a dream." 48 years? That's incredible. And what kind of food are we talking about? Soul food, Steve. The real thing. The kind that makes you remember Sunday dinners at your grandmother's house. Collard greens that'll make you want to call your mama. Mac and cheese that's basically a religious experience. And, she paused, her eyes twinkling, my famous sweet potato pie. In the green room, Louisa gasped softly, her hand flying to her mouth. The production assistant touched her shoulder gently. "You okay, Miss Louisa?" Louisa nodded, tears already forming in her eyes. "She makes sweet potato pie, just like me. Oh my Lord, look at her face. That's my face." Back on stage, Steve was fully engaged. "Sweet potato pie. Now you're speaking my language. What makes yours so special?" Loretta glanced at her family, who all smiled knowingly. "It's a secret recipe, Steve. My mama taught it to me when I was 7 years old. She said it came from her mother, passed down through generations. It's got a little something special that nobody can quite figure out." "A secret ingredient?" Steve pressed playfully. "Well, I use brown butter, a touch of bourbon, and—" Loretta smiled mysteriously. "Something else that I'll never tell." In the green room, Louisa was crying openly now. "Brown butter and bourbon. Oh my God. Oh my God, that's the recipe. That's Mama's recipe." Steve continued with the introductions. "James, how long you been married to this beautiful woman?" 52 years this past June. Steve, best decision I ever made was walking into a restaurant. Came for the food, stayed for the cook. "And Marcus, Angela, Denise, you all work in the family business?" Marcus nodded. "Yes, sir. It's truly a family operation. I handle the business side. Angela works the kitchen with Mama, and Denise runs our catering division." "Actually, Steve," Angela interjected, her voice carrying a slight tremor that only her family would notice. "There's something special about today. Something Mama doesn't know yet." Loretta turned to her daughter with surprise. "Angela? What are you talking about, baby?" Steve moved closer, his expression growing more serious. "Loretta, your children have been working with our producers on something. Angela, why don't you tell your mama what you discovered?" Angela took a deep breath, tears already streaming down her face. "Mama, you know how you've always said you felt like something was missing? Not that our family wasn't enough, but just something you couldn't explain?" Loretta nodded slowly, her expression becoming concerned. "Angela, you're scaring me. What's going on?" "6 months ago, for your 75th birthday, we did that DNA test, remember? The ancestry one?" "Yes. To trace our family history. You said we had roots in Mississippi and Alabama." "We do, Mama. But that's not all we found." Angela's voice broke. "Mama, you were adopted." The studio went completely silent. Loretta's face went through a series of expressions: confusion, disbelief, a flicker of something that might have been recognition of a truth she'd always somehow known. "That's not possible," Loretta whispered. "My mama, she raised me. She taught me everything, the recipes, the cooking." "She did raise you," Marcus said gently, stepping forward. "Grandma Sarah was your mother in every way that mattered. But Mama, you were born a twin." Loretta's legs seemed to weaken, and James quickly steadied her. "A twin? I have a twin?" "You do," Denise confirmed, her voice thick with emotion. "And Mama, she's here." Steve stepped forward, his usual comedic demeanor replaced by genuine emotion. "Loretta, your twin sister is backstage right now. Her name is Louisa. She's 75 years old, just like you. She lives in Philadelphia." "And Loretta?" Steve's voice caught slightly. "She's been looking for you her whole life, too." Loretta was crying now, her whole body trembling. "She's here? My sister is here?" "She's here," Steve confirmed. "And there's more. Louisa owns a catering company in Philadelphia. She's been in the food business for 45 years. And Loretta. She makes the exact same sweet potato pie. The exact same recipe. Brown butter, bourbon, and that secret ingredient you won't tell anyone." "Cardamom," Loretta whispered. "The secret is cardamom." Steve smiled through his own tears. "That's right. She uses cardamom too, because you both learned it from the same source. Your birth mother taught it to both your adoptive mothers before she had to let you go." The audience was collectively holding their breath. Marcus had his arm around his mother now, supporting her as she processed this impossible information. "Can I?" Loretta's voice was barely audible. "Can I see her?" Steve nodded and turned toward the side of the stage. "Louisa, come on out." The studio seemed to hold its breath as a figure emerged from the shadows. Louisa Johnson walked slowly onto the stage, her face a mirror of Loretta's emotions. She was wearing a simple blue dress, her silver hair styled exactly like her sister's, and when she walked, it was with the same dignified grace that Loretta carried herself with every day. The two women stood frozen, 20 feet apart, staring at each other across a distance that represented 75 years of separation. The studio was so quiet you could hear the hum of the lights overhead. "Oh my Lord," Loretta breathed. "It's like looking in a mirror." Louisa was crying openly, her hands pressed to her chest. "I've been looking for you my whole life. I didn't even know I was looking, but I was." They moved toward each other slowly, as if in a dream, meeting in the center of the stage. For a moment they just stood there, taking in every detail of each other's faces. The same deep brown eyes, the same high cheekbones, the same gentle smile lines that spoke of lives filled with laughter despite the missing piece. "My sister," Loretta whispered, reaching out to touch Louisa's face. "You're my sister." "I'm your sister," Louisa confirmed, her voice breaking completely. They fell into each other's arms then, holding on as if they could make up for 7.5 decades of separation in a single embrace. The audience was on their feet, many crying openly. Steve Harvey, who'd seen it all in his years of television, was wiping his eyes with his pocket square. "Look at your faces," Louisa said when they finally pulled back, her hands framing Loretta's face. "We have the same face, the same hands. Look." She held up her hands, and Loretta matched them with her own, identical down to the shape of their fingernails. "Tell me everything," Loretta said urgently. Where have you been? How did your family? Steve gently intervened. Ladies, I know you have 75 years to catch up on, but can we bring your families out? They're all waiting to meet each other. Louisa nodded and called out, Carl, David, Patricia, Sharon, come on out here. The Johnson family emerged from backstage, moving quickly to join their matriarch. Carl, distinguished at 76 with salt and pepper hair, immediately extended his hand to James. I've heard so much about you in the last few weeks. It's an honor to meet you. Likewise, James replied, his voice thick with emotion. This is incredible. The children were introducing themselves, the similar ages creating instant connections. Marcus and David discovered they were only 6 months apart in age. Angela and Patricia were both 48. Denise and Sharon were both in their 40s. Wait, Angela said suddenly. If our mothers are twins, that makes us cousins, Patricia finished, and then they were hugging too, the two families beginning to blend into one. Steve gave them a moment before speaking. Now, I know everybody wants to know the story. Loretta and Louisa, you were born in rural Mississippi in 1950. Your birth mother was a young woman named Ruby Mae Thompson. She was only 19 years old, and times were hard, really hard. Louisa picked up the story, having learned it weeks ago when the producers first contacted her. She worked for 2 different families as a housekeeper, the Williamses and the Johnsons. Both families had been trying for children for years without success. When Ruby Mae found out she was having twins, Steve continued, she knew she couldn't raise them. Her own mother had passed, her father was gone, and she had no way to support 2 babies. But those 2 families she worked for, they'd become like family to her. Loretta was listening intently, holding Louisa's hand tightly. So she made the hardest decision a mother can make, Louisa said softly. She gave one of us to each family. The Williamses moved to Memphis right after adopting you. The Johnsons moved to Philadelphia with me. She made sure we'd be far enough apart that the families wouldn't cross paths. But she did one thing. The recipe, Loretta breathed. The recipe, Louisa confirmed. She gave both our mothers the sweet potato pie recipe, told them it had been in her family for generations, and asked them to teach it to us when we were old enough. It was her way of keeping us connected. But there's more, Angela said, pulling out her phone. The DNA test didn't just find Aunt Louisa. It found Mama. Ruby Mae is still alive. Both sisters gasped in unison, a perfectly synchronized reaction that would have been eerie if it wasn't so natural. She's 94 years old, Marcus added, living in a nursing home in Jackson, Mississippi. She never married, never had other children. The staff says she makes sweet potato pie every Thanksgiving for the residents, with cardamom, Denise added softly. Loretta and Louisa looked at each other, a lifetime of questions in their eyes. We've already arranged it, David said. If you want to meet her, we can go next week. All of us. She knows about us finding each other? Louisa asked. She does, Patricia confirmed. When we called her, she cried for an hour. She said she's prayed every single night for 75 years that you'd find each other. She said she always believed the recipe would bring you together somehow. Steve stepped forward again. And that's not even the most amazing part. Tell them about the other coincidences. The children looked at each other, smiling through their tears. You both married men you met in restaurants, Marcus began. You both got married in June, Angela added. 3 years apart, but both in June. You both wore your mother's wedding dresses, Denise contributed. The adoptive mothers, I mean. Sarah Williams and Betty Johnson both gave you their dresses. You both had your first child at 25, David continued. You both opened your businesses in the same year, 1976, Patricia added. You both sing in your church choirs, Sharon finished. You're both altos. The sisters were laughing and crying simultaneously now, marveling at the parallel lives they'd lived. Oh, Louisa said suddenly. Do you have a scar on your left knee from falling off a bicycle? Loretta's eyes widened. When I was 8 years old, Needed 6 stitches.
Me too. Same age, same knee, same 6 stitches.
Do you hate cauliflower? Loretta asked. Can't stand it. Never could. Do you sneeze when you look at bright lights? Every time. Carl thinks I'm crazy. They went back and forth like this, discovering similarity after similarity, their families watching with joy and amazement. The audience had given up any pretense of composure. There wasn't a dry eye in the studio. Steve finally had to intervene gently.
Ladies, I hate to interrupt this beautiful moment, but we do have a show to tape. Although, he looked at his producer, who nodded.
We're going to do something we've never done in the history of Family Feud. We're going to combine your families into one big team, and you're going to play together. Is that okay with everyone? Both families erupted in agreement, and they arranged themselves at one podium, all 10 of them crowded together. The sisters at the center, still holding hands. Before we start, Steve said, Loretta and Louisa, there's one more surprise. Your families didn't just bring you together for this reunion. They've been working on something else. Marcus stepped forward with a folder. We've been talking with publishers. They want to do a cookbook, The Twin Sisters' Secret Recipes, featuring both your restaurants, both your stories, and the sweet potato pie recipe Angela finished. It's time the world knew the secret. Ruby May said it's okay. She wants everyone to taste what kept you connected all these years. All the proceeds will go to a scholarship fund, David added, for young people who want to pursue culinary careers but can't afford school. The Ruby May Thompson Culinary Scholarship, Patricia said. She cried when we told her. Loretta and Louisa were beyond words now, just holding each other and crying. Their children surrounded them, and then the grandchildren who'd been waiting backstage ran out too. A flood of young people who'd grown up not knowing they had cousins, now meeting for the first time. You know what's beautiful about this? Steve said to the audience, his voice thoughtful. These 2 women built successful businesses, raised beautiful families, created legacies in their communities, all while carrying this feeling that something was missing. And now, at 75 years old, they get to be complete. They get to be whole. That's the thing, Loretta said, finding her voice. We thought we were looking for something we'd lost. But really, we were just waiting to find something that was always there. Every time I made that pie, I was connecting with my sister. Every time she made it, she was connecting with me. Ruby May knew what she was doing. She kept us together the only way she could. And our families, Louisa added, looking at all their children and grandchildren. Look what we built separately. Now imagine what we can do together. The game that followed was unlike any in Family Feud history. The combined Williams-Johnson family played with joy and laughter, the sisters finishing each other's sentences, their children bonding instantly, their grandchildren already making plans for summer visits. They won the game, of course, but that seemed beside the point. They'd already won something infinitely more valuable. During the fast money round, Steve asked Loretta and Louisa to play together, another first in the show's history. Name something you'd find in a kitchen, Steve read. Sweet potato pie, they both shouted simultaneously, then collapsed in laughter. They won $20,000, which they immediately announced would go toward the scholarship fund. But the real prize was what happened after the cameras stopped rolling. The 2 families stayed on stage for another hour, talking, laughing, sharing photos, making plans. Thanksgiving, Loretta said firmly. We're all doing Thanksgiving together. In Memphis this year, Philadelphia next year. And we're both making the pie, Louisa added. Together, the way it should have been all along. A week later, the 2 families made the trip to Jackson, Mississippi. Ruby May Thompson, 94 years old and fragile but sharp as ever, was waiting in the sunshine room of the nursing home. When her daughters walked in together, she put her weathered hands to her face and wept. My beautiful girls, she said when she could speak. Oh, my beautiful, beautiful girls. You found each other. They sat with her for hours, one on each side, holding her hands as she told them the story they'd waited their whole lives to hear. How she'd loved them from the moment she knew they existed. How choosing which family would take which baby was the hardest thing she'd ever done. How she'd given each adoptive mother a lock of the other twins' hair, though neither Sarah Williams nor Betty Johnson ever knew what it meant. "I knew you'd find each other," Ruby May said. "I knew it in my bones. That recipe was my prayer. Every time you made it, you were sharing something sacred. You were staying sisters. Why didn't you ever try to find us?" Louisa asked gently. "Those were different times, baby. I signed papers saying I wouldn't. And your parents, all four of them, they were good people. They gave you lives I never could have. But I never stopped loving you. Never stopped praying for you. Every single night. For 75 years. They stayed in Mississippi for 3 days, visiting Ruby May each day, cooking together in the nursing home kitchen, making that famous sweet potato pie for all the residents. Ruby May supervised from her wheelchair, occasionally calling out corrections and additions, finally sharing all the secrets she'd held back. "You know what the real secret ingredient is?" she said on their last day. "It's not the cardamom, though that helps. It's love. It's making something with your whole heart, knowing that somewhere, someone who shares your soul is making it too." The Family Feud episode aired 2 months later, to the highest ratings in the show's history. The reunion clip went viral within hours, shared millions of times across social media. Messages poured in from around the world. Other twins separated at birth, adoptees searching for family, people who'd been moved to tears by the story of two sisters who found their way back to each other through a recipe. The cookbook became a bestseller before it was even released. Food Network offered them a show, Cooking with the Twins, where they'd travel to each other's restaurants and cook together. They turned it down at first, saying they were too old for television, but their grandchildren convinced them to do just 1 season. "You've got to share this story," Loretta's granddaughter Jasmine said. "People need to see that it's never too late to find your family." The show was a hit, but more importantly, it gave them an excuse to spend even more time together. They'd film in Memphis 1 month, Philadelphia the next, and always made time to visit Ruby May in Jackson. On their 76th birthday, celebrated together for the first time, they held a massive party in Memphis. The entire banquet hall was filled with both families, friends from both cities, and dozens of people who'd been touched by their story. The cake was enormous, decorated with sweet potatoes and the words, "Together at last." "You know what I've learned?" Loretta said in her speech that night. "Family isn't just about blood. Our adoptive parents were our real parents. They raised us, loved us, gave us everything. But family is also about connection. It's about that pull you feel toward someone, that recognition of yourself in another person's eyes. And sometimes," Louisa added, "family is about a recipe passed down through generations, carrying love across miles and years, keeping people connected even when they don't know they're connected." They served sweet potato pie, of course. Hundreds of them, all made from Ruby May's recipe. Now, no longer secret but shared with the world. Each piece came with a small card telling the story and a QR code linking to the scholarship fund. By their 77th birthday, the scholarship had sent 12 young people to culinary school. By their 78th, it was 30. The twins made surprise visits to culinary schools, teaching master classes in soul food and telling their story to aspiring chefs. "The thing about soul food," Louisa would say, standing side by side with her sister in front of a class, "is that it's about more than food. It's about history, family, connection. It's about keeping traditions alive even when everything else changes. It's about love," Loretta would add. "Every dish tells a story. Every recipe carries memory. When you cook your grandmother's greens or your aunt's cornbread, you're keeping them alive. You're honoring where you came from." They demonstrate the sweet potato pie together, their movements perfectly synchronized despite having learned separately. They'd finish each other's sentences, laugh at the same moments, and occasionally just look at each other in wonder, still amazed that they'd found each other. Ruby May lived to see her 96th birthday, long enough to meet her great-grandchildren and even some great-great-grandchildren. The twins were with her when she passed, holding her hands, singing the hymns she'd taught them both through their adoptive mothers, another gift she'd given to keep them connected. They laid her to rest in Memphis, halfway between their two cities, with a headstone that read, Ruby May Thompson, Mother, Secret Keeper, Prayer Warrior. Her love connected us all. The twins continued their monthly visits, their cookbook tours, their scholarship work. They became symbols of hope for separated families everywhere. Their restaurants became pilgrimage sites for people seeking not just good food, but the story of resilience and connection they represented. The years passed sweetly, filled with Sunday dinners that alternated between Memphis and Philadelphia, with grandchildren who grew up knowing both sides of their family. With recipes shared and stories told, and love multiplied, they aged gracefully. These two sisters who'd found each other in the autumn of their lives, making up for lost time, with presence, with attention, with the fierce devotion of people who knew what it was like to live with a missing piece. At 80 years old, they were still cooking, still serving, still telling their story to anyone who would listen. Their restaurants had become institutions. Their scholarship fund had grown into a foundation, and their families had woven together so completely that newcomers couldn't tell where one ended and the other began. "You know what I think?" Loretta said one morning as they video called while making pies in their respective kitchens, a routine they'd maintained for years. "What's that?" Louisa asked, measuring flour with the practiced ease of someone who'd been doing it for 7 decades. "I think everything happened exactly as it was meant to. If we'd grown up together, we'd have one family, one restaurant, one story. But because we grew up apart, we have all this." She gestured at her kitchen, where her granddaughter was learning to roll out pie crust. "2 families, 2 restaurants, 2 communities touched by our food and our story. Double the blessings," Louisa agreed, her own granddaughter visible in the background, taking notes on the recipe. "Exactly. We didn't lose 75 years. We gained 2 lifetimes of experiences to share." They baked in comfortable silence for a moment, the kind of silence that exists between people who are so connected they don't always need words. "Same time tomorrow?" Louisa asked as they prepared to end their call. "Wouldn't miss it for the world," Loretta replied. And they meant it, because when you've spent 75 years apart, you don't take a single morning for granted. When you found your other half, you hold on tight. When you've discovered that love can transcend time and distance and circumstance, you honor it every single day. The sweet potato pies came out perfect, as they always did. And in 2 kitchens 300 miles apart but connected by something stronger than distance, 2 sisters took a bite at exactly the same moment and smiled exactly the same smile. It tasted like memory. It tasted like hope. It tasted like coming home.